This movie is like watching DC Comics' Barbara Gordon as Oracle and Tim Drake as Robin team up to kill people, without the martial arts and the social skills. Batteries not included.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to stay tuned and show support for the channel.
The story opens up with Charles working in the shed on some gadgets to fix the plane he had gotten from his wife, Sarah, who joined him that morning before she left for a business trip in Europe. We follow Charles's everyday life in the CIA, and he's a nerd in the purest form of the word. Charles's world becomes distorted a few days later when his bosses give him the news that his wife was murdered by a band of terrorists. Charles is in disbelief but comes to terms that he has lost the love of his life after seeing the news release and video footage. Charles had spent time gathering intel thanks to his pen pal Inquilene on attacks overseas, which he found that was linked to his bosses in the CIA, one of which is Director Moore. After the death of his wife, he used his tech smarts and gave the names and locations for all 4 terrorists. But his bosses already knew this, and on the surface, it looks like they are doing nothing about it. That's when Charles decides to blackmail his bosses with the intel he got from Inquilene, in exchange for training, a new identity, and money so that he can go overseas and find his wife's killers to end them. His bosses concedes to his demands and gives him training by a guy named Anderson. While Charles undergoes training, his bosses are raiding his workspace and home for intel they are being blackmailed with. They end up finding what they were looking for and message Anderson to cap this fool. Charles manages to escape and planned out his first kill, not with a gun, but by tracking and trapping the female terrorist in Paris, by suffocating her with pollen at a health clinic in a concealed chamber, which didn't go well at first, but El Truckle finished the job for him. Charles is later seen on the run from Anderson, where he cleverly escapes and makes a trip to Istanbul to connect with Inquilene for the first time, who turns out to be a woman. Together they operated like Batman and Oracle, but it's more like Oracle and Tim Drake without the martial arts and the social skills and the Riz, where they planned their next hit, resulting in the death of the second terrorist at a pool suspended at least 20 stories above the ground. I would never. From this intel, he managed to escape Anderson, who is badly hurt by another CIA operative sent by CIA Director O'Brien to investigate Director Moore's affairs and managed to find a lead on the next location of the other terrorists. Because Director Moore's team have been monitoring the footage back in the USA of Charles's behavior, they figured out the identity of his contact with Inquilene, that he was a deceased agent who had an experienced widow, and they tracked them down in Istanbul, where they escaped in a vehicle that was under gunfire, but at the cost of the widow's life. When you think about it, this wasn't smart at all. Why would the widow of an intelligence agent use the name of her husband as her alias? You would have had better luck calling yourself the Riddler or Pikachu. After saying his goodbyes to the deceased widow, Charles traps the third terrorist on some jigsaw shit and manages to get his phone and intel on the ringleader that killed his wife, i.e. the one that pulled that trigger, that capped her ass. Mind you, this terrorist is holding a crate open that if it drops, well, you know the rest. After the explosion, Charles heads to Russia to find the ringleader, Schiller. And with careful planning, he is knocked out and brought onto a ship with Schiller there. Guns are aimed at Charles, and Schiller explains everything to Charles, that he was on a CIA op from the director and his wife saved the life of a man by switching places with him as a hostage. As Charles held the gun given to him by Schiller to prove that Charles is not a true killer, we learned that Charles was playing them the entire time, and time was key because he needed to stall them long enough so that the ship crossed waters into a different country zone, so that his computer program from his hotel can maneuver the vessel into the hands of law enforcement and Interpol. Schiller couldn't believe it because his ship was encrypted, but failed to realize that Charles was the one who wrote the encryption for the CIA. In other words, I designed the game and wrote the instruction manual for what you're using, bitch. Schiller and his band of merry men are arrested. Intel got leaked to Director O'Brien of his two bosses' involvement in terror-based activities, resulting in their arrest, and Charles was able to fly the plane gifted to him by his wife into the open sky. End scene.